Pretty much everyone knows that the United States has landed a person on the moon. Because when Neil Armstrong said those famous words,
"The Eagle has landed,"
to tell NASA Mission Control that the mission was accomplished, they all knew and everybody else knew that the US had become very unique, as they were the first country to ever do such a thing. This was back in 1969, but today, as of 2023, America is still the only country in the world to actually have landed humans on the moon. But what if I told you that every country in the world has a feature that makes them unique just like this? Would you believe me? Well, let's dive in and see what makes your country one of a kind. Every year in Norway, in the city of Oslo, the Nobel Peace Prize is handed out. Maybe you knew this. But did you know that this is the only place in the world it has ever been awarded? Why, you might wonder? Well, no one really knows. All we do know is that Alfred Nobel, the founder of the prize, wished that the prize awarded to the one who had done most for fraternity between nations should be given away in Norway. All the other Nobel Prizes are handed out in Sweden, so why he chose Norway for this prize remains unknown. Perhaps it has something to do with Norway being ruled in union with Sweden at the time of Nobel's death. In southern Africa, there's a tiny landlocked country called Lesotho. Now, what's unique about this place is that it's the only country in the world that is entirely above 1,000 meters in elevation. So if you're planning on moving to Lesotho, well, don't be afraid of heights. Have you ever been to Nauru? You know, that tiny island nation northeast of Australia? Then what city did you visit there? Well, you can't answer that, can you? You see, Nauru is the only country in the world without a capital city. In fact, there isn't really a city at all, just random clusters of buildings spreading out over the island. And Brazil. What's not to like about this place? You probably heard many referring to Brazil as the land of football. And with what I'm about to tell you, pretty obvious that statement is correct. You see, Brazil is the only country in the world that has competed in every FIFA World Cup that's ever been held. And they're also the only country with 5 gold medals in the tournament. Football is in their DNA for sure. Oh, and another thing that makes them unique? They're the only Portuguese-speaking country in the Americas. Okay, so Iceland. This place is pretty much the image of storytelling and magic. I mean, the place looks both scary and beautiful at the same time. So are you really surprised to hear that Iceland is the only country where the majority of the population believes in elves? Yeah, there has actually been a study of this from a local newspaper. Yet that story was back in 1998, so things could have shifted over. But back then, 54% of the people believed in this magical being. But there's actually more. Iceland is in fact the only country in the world that doesn't have mosquitoes. So no annoying things that fly in your face when you host the evening dinner party outside. When I say India, what do you think of? Probably amazing food, right? And probably not this thing that truly makes them unique. You see, India is the only country in the world where you can fight both lions and tigers in the wild. So everywhere else there's either one, the other, or none, but here they both exist. Pretty cool if you ask me. And while we're down in Asia, let's look east to the country of Thailand, the land of smiles. They have a super interesting history with so many things going on. Like this one guy who refused to do his job and hand in the declaration of war against the US, which later turned out to be a very great thing. And this might not be a unique thing, but this thing actually is. As they're the only country in Southeast Asia that was never colonized by European powers. And we actually made a video where we explain Thailand more in depth. So if you want to hear more about this, go check that one out. Now, in Taiwan, you know, that island outside of China that's constantly under pressure from the huge empire. Well, here they do something that I found, well, just fun. Their garbage trucks plays music, you know, like an ice cream truck, simply to alert their residents of their arrival. Pretty smart, right? Ecuador. Now that's Spanish sort of for the equator. And the equator is this imaginary line that runs around the middle of the Earth, just halfway between the North and South Pole. And it's said that the closer to the equator you are, the hotter it gets, since, you know, you're closer to the sun. Now, Ecuador is the only country in the world that has gotten its name from a geographical feature. Have you ever been to Bosnia and Herzegovina? It's a very interesting place and the food here is actually quite good. But what's more interesting about them is that it's the only country in the world that has 3 presidents at the same time. And how does that work, you might wonder? Well, the presidents are elected over a 4-year period, and they rotate every 8 months. To simplify, the 3 members are elected from the ranks of Bosniaks, Croats and Serbs. a solution that came after the wars that occurred in the area between 1992 and 1995. Now moving over to the paradise that is the Maldives. This is pretty much the definition of vacation and luxury, with its white sand beaches and crystal clear water. And speaking of water, the Maldives is the only country where 99% of its territory is just that, water. Then take into consideration that the highest point is just roughly 1.5 meters, and you start to think that this country will also be the first completely underwater nation in the future. Can you imagine the confusion and perhaps even panic that occurred a while back when the US accidentally displayed the Philippine flag upside down? It happened when former President Obama was meeting with his counterpart, Philippine President Benigno Aquino. And why the confusion, you might wonder? Well, the Philippines do just this, display their flag upside down to show when the country is in a state of war. And while we're on the subject of flags, let's talk about Libya, as they are the only country that has ever had a unicolor flag, meaning a flag that is just a single color with no insignia, design or other details. Nowadays their flag looks a bit different, as you can see, but between 1977 and 2011 they just had this green flag. And what about the flag shape? Well, there is a country that is unique in this area as well. Nepal, the mountainous country located in the Himalayas. They have something different than all other countries, which mostly use a rectangular shaped flag. It's even more unique than the two countries that use square-shaped ones. You see, the Nepal flag is instead made of two pennants stacked on top of each other. How do you like this flag? Personally, I think it's nice to see something different. And speaking of different, do you think we ever see a round flag? Lego. You knew this was coming, didn't you? Well, Lego isn't unique in itself, as the popular building bricks are being sold pretty much all over the world at this point. And even though the bricks once was made in Denmark only, that as well has changed over the years to fill the growing demand for the colorful bricks. But Denmark still has something that no other country has, and it still has to do with Lego. They actually got a secret Lego vault. And this place is so secret that it's closed to the public, and it contains every Lego set ever made. Over 7,500 sealed sets that go back decades. So I guess it makes sense to not let people in there, as the value of that vault probably is a lot. Okay, North Korea. What unique things does this country hold? I mean, isn't it something about North Korea that is just fascinating? Maybe it's the secrecy or maybe it's something else. I don't know really. I just know that I'm interested in the place. And let's just say I found something that makes them very unique. You see, North Korea is the only country in the world with existing necrocracy. Okay, so you heard of democracy and communism, right? Well, necrocracy is another, a bit more, in lack of better words, odd leadership system. And it basically means that a country is ruled by a dead person. So after the Korean War, Kim Il-sung became the leader and president of North Korea, and the people of Korea worshipped him. So naturally, after his death in 1994, the people went into a countrywide mourning. Then in 1998, a new constitution took away the position of president and instead made Kim Il-sung the eternal president of North Korea. And the power of the president position was given to the head of the Presidium of the Supreme People's Assembly, meaning that person became sort of the leader in day-to-day things, but the country is still technically run by the old, dead dictator. Moldova might not be the biggest country by size, but they do have something that no other country has, an underground city of wine. Milesti Mici is the world's largest wine cellar and has more than 200 kilometers of tunnels. It holds roughly 1.5 million bottles, and to move through the tunnels, you can choose to go by electrical train, car or bicycle. Now imagine getting down in your basement, then starting the car to go grab a bottle of wine. And you quickly understand the size of this thing. So you know how countries measure their success with something called GDP, right? Or gross domestic product, which is a measure to see the total amount of money a country is making in a year by selling all its products and services. Well, Bhutan does it a bit differently. In fact, so different that they're the only country in the world to measure its success from something called GNH, or Global National Happiness, because they believe this is a much more important thing to measure. So the country does extensive surveys where they ask their citizens about many aspects of their lives, which is then analyzed and combined into GNH. This value is then used to guide the nation in policymaking so that it supports happiness and well-being. Isn't it just remarkable how every country just has something that makes them one of a kind? Did we include your country? If not, make sure you leave a comment about where you're from. When you're done commenting, click on either of the videos on your screen right now and learn more about the world.